Now that we have imported all of our assets and we organize the project, what we need to do is here in our gameplay scene, I am going to go under assets and drag my textures right here, or sprites. So I'm going to position this one at 0, 0 for the X and for the Y. And in the previous video, I've talked about the size of the camera, and notice here, if I select the camera, go here under game, you see that we have gaps, top left, bottom right. Also, we have gaps because our background is not large enough to fit in the camera. Now, there are two ways how can we fix this. We can either, for example, scale the camera by 2, or scale the background by 2, or maybe scale it by, let's say, 1.3 to 1.3. So scale it 1.3, 1.3, or what we can do is we can take the camera, and by the way, what I did is change the scale, which is this one right here. The scale will practically multiply. So let's say, for example, if I say 1.3 here, it will make the object 1.3 times wider or larger on the x-axis. If I say here 1.3 on the y, it will make the game object 1.3 times larger on the y-axis. So that's one of the ways how we can fix it. But another way is to simply take the camera, and here we have the size of the camera. I can set it back to 4, and now notice if I go here, everything is perfect. We don't have any gaps and our background is fully functional. Now, what I also want to do is I am gonna go and create a new game object under game object here, and then create empty. And this is gonna be my background. So I'm gonna simply name it backgrounds, and I am gonna put all of these backgrounds inside of that game object. So let me just position this one at 0, 0, and we need to position this one at 0, 0, 2, because the position of the child will be the same as the position of the parent. So we see here that our backgrounds are at 0, 0. Because of that, we need to position our BG1 to be at 0, 0. Now, what I also want to do is I want to add here sorting layers. Now, sorting layers determine the sort, or how our game objects are rendered on the screen. So the first sorting layer here, if I click add sorting layer, I click plus here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add BG. So I'm gonna say here BG for the background. I'm gonna click one more time for the platform, and I am gonna click one more time for the player. So we're gonna have these layers, sorting layers for the BG, platform, and player. So I'm gonna select the BG, and now what this means. Well, the order is like this. The first BG, which is this one right here, or the first sorting layer, which is BG, and it's this one right here, will be the first that will be rendered on the screen. The next one is the platform, meaning the platform will be rendered on top of this sorting layer. Now, let me demonstrate that. If I go in my assets and I take the platform and put it right here. Now, notice the platform is rendered behind our background. We don't see it. If I go here under game, we don't see it. But if I select the platform and for the sorting layer, I set platform, notice how magically our platform, has appeared in our screen. That is the reason, or the reason for it is because, well, this sorting layers. As I said, the first one will be rendered first on the screen. The second one will be rendered on top of it. So if we select the last BG, or the last sorting layer, meaning that our platform will be rendered first and our background is now rendered on top of the platform, obscuring the platform from being seen. So the platform is going to be here, but this is not about the platform, but I just wanted to demonstrate it because what I want to do now is I want to copy BG1 and position it right here. Let me just go and position it right here. We can also use the snap tool. So I can go here, I can zoom in. The snap tool is at key V. So holding V, this will appear here. And if I hold it and just drag it down, it will snap them correctly on one another. So what I want to do now is copy this background and position it here, zoom in a little bit so that I can use the snap tool, again holding V, so not W but the key V on your keyboard. This will appear here and you need to hold it, then left click and bam, you're gonna snap these two together. And notice they are snapped like they are one, well, background. And copy it one more time and go here. And what I want to do is hold the V key, holding V, bam, snapping it one more time. So this is what we, well, need to do for our backgrounds. We will come back to them later, but now what I want to do is I want to take my platform, and what I want to do with it is that I want to add it here, add a collider on it so that our player can, well, be positioned on it. So if I take the player and I just double click this, did not want to double click it, but position it here, and we need to select the player sorting layer for the player, and the player needs to be right here. Now we see that our player and our ground right here, our platform, they are a little bit large, so we need to resize them. Or for the platform, what I want to do is I want to take it, I want to say 0.6 on the X and 0.6 on the Y. So this will be the size of our platform. And for our player, what we are going to do is we are going to resize the player. And the player can be, let me just go here, and the player is going to be 0.6 and 0.6, not negative, it's 0.6. So the player can also be 0.6, 0.6. Of course, we can, well, change this if we need to, but we are going to position him like this. So for my platform, just see the position of the player. It needs to be here, and 6.3 like this, so that our player is directly positioned on the platform. So how can we, if we run the game now, notice we have here the player, we have him standing on the platform now. We want to make our player be able to stand on the platform, but with physics, so physics affecting him. And in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to add a box collider on the player. So box collider first, and next we need to add a rigid body 2D. And if I run the game now, we're going to see the player falling down like a little Santa to a chimney. So we also need to go for our platform, and we need to type here box collider 2D. Now, this is a mistake I see a lot of people do. Now, when you are creating a 2D game, you are working with 2D objects. So if you type here box to search for the box collider, don't add this one, don't add box collider. So this one is for 3D. If I run the game now, notice nothing is gonna happen because this is for 3D. What you need to do is you need to search for box collider 2D. Now if I run the game now, we are gonna see that our player is gonna land directly on the cloud or on the platform. Why? Well, because it's a box collider 2D. It is not used for 3D. The box collider 3D is used for, well, 3D games. And the same way for the rigid body. It needs to be rigid body 2D. So not just rigid body, it's rigid body 2D. That's really important to pay attention because a lot of people are, hey, I did like you did in the video, but it's not working. Okay, I say send me the project, and I take a look and he has added box collider 2, oh, excuse me, he has only added box collider, not box collider 2D. So you did not do as, well, the same as I did in the video. If you did it like I did in the video, everything would work. But you added box collider and then you say, hey, it's not working, the collision is not being detected. Well, of course not, because this is a 2D game and you're using 3D elements. That's why it's not working. So you need to be careful about that. Now, we have the player who is jumping, or he is standing on our platform right here. So he will fall down because the gravity is, well, dragging him down. If I run the game again, he is falling down. So far, so good. Now, this is the setup that we want. What we want to do now is we want to add a jump button. So I'm going to go under Game Object, UI, and I am going to search for a button, which is, voila, this one right here. Now, notice how big the canvas is. So if I take the canvas, And what we want to do with the canvas is we want to change the render mode from screen space overlay to screen space camera. And we want to attach the main camera on our, well, canvas right here. For the sorting layer, we are gonna create another one. So the sorting layer is gonna be canvas because we want to put the canvas on that sorting layer. So I'm gonna click here, add sorting layer. I'm gonna say plus, and I'm gonna say here canvas. And I'm gonna select the sorting layer canvas so that our canvas will be on top of everything else, because so far our button was not visible. If I put back on default, we see that our button is rendered behind. So if I take the canvas and put it on the canvas sorting layer, it is rendered on top of everything else. For the UI scale mode, we are not going to select constant pixel size, but we are going to select scale with screen size, and the screen size is 480 by 800 because the assets for this short little video series is created by using this reference resolution 480 by 800. And for the match width and height, I'm going to say 0.5 so that it will match width and height equally. Now for the button, I am gonna rename it to jump button. So jump button like this, remove the text from it because we don't need it, and I am gonna scale our button. Now notice here we have these tools on the top left corner. So we have the hand, we have these arrows, we have also these arrows, we have this one right here, I'm not sure what this is, and we have this cube. If you select this cube right here, then you will be able to, well, resize objects like this. So you simply drag them and you resize them. So we need this for our button because I'm gonna resize the button to be at the half of the screen. So half of the screen like this, and now this is gonna be our jump button, this right here. If I run the game, we'll be able to press our button and notice how the button is blinking when I am pressing it. Now one problem that we have here is that the button is obscuring the player. Well, for that we are simply gonna select it, go here under color, and well, simply pump down the alpha, so put it at 0, and it will be completely transparent. So now what we want to do is we are gonna create our very first, well, script. So I'm gonna click right. What am I saying? I'm gonna right click here. So right click, create, and folder. This is gonna be our scripts folder. And in the scripts folder, I'm gonna right click one more time, folder, player, not player, it's player scripts. And inside of our player scripts, I am gonna create a new C# script because we are gonna use, well, C# script. So here I'm gonna say player script, hit enter. Before I do anything, I am gonna attach it on our player here, and I'm gonna change it from player idle to simply player. And this is how you attach a script on a game object so that it will execute the code that you input in there. So if I double click on the player script, it will open here in MonoDevelop, and voila, we are good to go. So let me just tag the class right here and give a little bit of space so that we can see what we are typing. And maybe I will go here in MonoDevelop. Let me just see 1 second. Preferences and fonts, and let me just take a look at here. Maybe at 17, size 17. If I click OK, let me see the size of the font. 17 is okay, so that we can see what we are typing here clearly. So what we need to do? Well, the plan is this. We need to get a reference to this button right here, which is our jump button. And we are going to do that in our code, and we are going to attach to it a function that is going to be executed when we click on the button. So that function needs to be public. So any function that you attach to a button in Unity, it needs to be public void. It cannot return anything. So here I'm going to say public void, and I'm going to name it jump. So jump like this. And what we are going to do here is we are going to take the rigid body, for which we are going to say here private rigid body 2D, and I'm going to say my body, which is the rigid body of the player. If I go here and select the player, we see that we added this rigid body. So the rigid body is the one who is actually applying physics to a game object that is attached to. So I'm going to take here the rigid body, and I'm going to say if my body that velocity dot y is equal to 0, meaning our player is standing still. So when the velocity is equal to 0, the player is standing still, because the velocity is the increase of speed over time. Now people ask me, what is the difference if we type here my body dot velocity is equal to new vector 2, for example, let's say 2 and 2, and what's the difference if we type my body dot add force and we pass here a new vector 2 like this? So what is the difference between the two? Well, this is all about physics. You need to understand physics a little bit. So velocity is the speed over time. So when the speed increases over time, the velocity also increases. And adding force means that we are applying a force to that game object, which will move that game object over time. So if we add a force like this, it will move the game object a little bit slower than if we use the velocity directly. Think of the velocity as turbo. So if we add velocity, it will add turbo to the car and it will boost it right away. But if we add gas a little bit and a little bit, that will add force to the car. But for the velocity, as I said, the velocity increases. That's the increase of speed over time. That's the definition of velocity. And if you don't believe me, well, you can go here, and I cannot open. Well, I'm not going to go in my browser now because I cannot open it. I'm not sure why. Anyway, so if my body velocity y is equal to 0, so what we are going to do? Well, we are going to take here, we're going to say my body dot velocity is equal to new vector 2, 0 for the x and 10 for the y, because we don't want to apply velocity on the x-axis. And that's that. Now we need to, well, get a reference to the button, and we need to attach this function right here to that button to make our player jump. Now I'm going to remove this comment from the start function and rename it to awake. And how can we get a reference to a button? Well, first things first, we are going to go on top and we are going to say using Unity Engine.ui, which will enable us to use the UI elements such as buttons. And here I am going to say private button, which I'm going to name jump button or jump btn. And we are going to get a reference to that button. And how we are going to do that? Well, we can go here and we can simply say jump btn is equal to, and we can say GameObject.find, and we need to pass here a name as a string. The name is the name of that game object. So if I go here in my Unity editor and I take a look at the button, ignore this error right here, because in a second we are going to fix it. This is the name of the button. So we named it the jump button. If I type here, enter, copy the name. So the name is jump button. If I go back and I type here jump button, it will get me that jump button. But we need to get the button from it. And if you take a look at the button here in the inspector panel, see this button right here, it's actually a script. It is attached to that game object. So what we need to do after we get the game object holding the button script, we need to say .get component, and here we need to pass button. So we need to say button like this. And now this will get us the button from that game object. And in order to add this function to it, we are going to use listeners. And for that, we are simply going to say here jump btn dot onclick dot add listener. And this is the syntax for adding a listener. So we open close parentheses, equals greater than sign, and we say here jump, so not jump btn, but jump, which is the name of our function. So this one right here, like this. And open close parentheses, equal greater than sign, jump, open close parentheses. This jump right here is actually the name of the function that we are adding. So adding a listener to our button now, when we click on it, it will execute this function. Why? Well, because right here, we have added it to the button itself. If I go back, make sure that we don't have any errors. Everything is cool. And what we need to do before we start the game is we actually need to get a reference to our rigid body. So we are going to simply say here, my body is equal to get component and passing here the rigid body 2D. Now, if it's not clear what I'm doing here, I have this in the previous tutorial series. Go check out Monster Chase, go check out the other tutorials like shooting the ball. I forgot the name of it. Anyway, I explained this in depth, so I don't think that there is a need to, well, say it again, but using this get component will actually get you the component, and I double clicked here because my Unity is near the preferences. Anything that we attach on any game object is a component that is on that game object. So what we attached on our player is a box collider 2D, a rigid body 2D, and the player script. Now, box collider, rigid body, and the player script, they are all components attached on this game object. If we want to get a reference to one of these, we simply type get component, passing here what we want to get. So we want to get the rigid body. If we want to get the box collider, then we say here box collider 2D, and this will get us the box collider. If we want to get the player script, then we will say player script, and it will get us that component which is attached on our player. But we want to get here the rigid body, so I'm gonna pass here the rigid body. And if we go now, and if I run the game, if I click on the button, you will see the player jump. Whee! Now again, whee! One more time, jump, jump, jump. And notice I am clicking. So I'm clicking and clicking and clicking, and we cannot jump twice. Why? Well, because I'm checking here if the velocity is equal to 0. The Y velocity will not be 0 if the player is in the sky or he has already jumped. The velocity will increase over time because that's the speed over time. And here we are passing the velocity to be 10. So as long as it does not go back to 0, we can't jump again. So now that we are able to jump and, well, we are jumping, as you can see, what we want to do? Well, we want to add our platform that the player can jump on. So the platform that the player is currently standing on is the platform which we are going to call the first platform. And for the second one, so let me just take here platform, and I'm going to name it first platform. And if I go back here in the assets, and let me just go here, I name this one assets. I'm actually going to name it sprites. So sprites. And I'm going to take the platform, I'm going to put it right here. I'm going to set the sorting layer to platform. Now this platform is going to be at 0.45, 0.45 for the X and for the Y. And I'm going to go here, here, and make it, well, 0. 0 for the X, 0 for the Y, for the position. Now, if I add a box collider to it, so I'm going to add a box collider to it, so like this, box collider, and we also need to add a rigid body 2D, and notice now, if I try to jump, so if I try to jump, well, this actually fell down on the player because what we need to do is take the platform, and here in the rigid body, we need to set is kinematic. Is kinematic will make that game object not affected by gravity, but the physics can affect it, but it will not be affected by gravity. Notice now it will not fall down because the gravity is not dragging it down. What will happen if we try to jump on the button? Well, the player is hitting with his head right here, hitting with his head in that, well, platform, and he is not able to jump over it. How can we achieve the effect? Because we saw in the preview of the game that our player was able to jump from below and land on top of the platform. Well, for that, we're going to use something interesting, introduced, I think, in Unity. I'm not sure if it's 5 or maybe, yeah, I think it's 5. I'm not sure. Anyway, we're going to go here under Add Component, and we are going to filter for something called the Platform Effector 2D. So Platform Effector 2D, what I'm going to do is move it up. And what we need to do, we need to select our box collider, which is this one right here, and we need to click here where it says used by Effector. We are going to check this checkbox. So it is now used by the Effector, which we just added here. And what we're going to do here, we are going to check here, use one way. We are going to uncheck use collider mask because we don't need it. Use one way, and that is going to enable us. So if I try now, notice, if I go here, and if I try now to jump, what do you think it will happen? Well, we are jumping now on our, well, platform. You see how simple that was? Before this was really complicated to achieve. You had to write some code, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, now it is really simple. We simply use the platform Effector 2D. We attach a box collider, we say use by Effector, and we checkbox it here. So click on this checkbox to make it be used by Effector, and we simply click here, use one way, uncheck use collider mask. And now what we are able to do is we are able to jump below, and we can jump again, so on and so forth. So in the next video, we're gonna continue because we're gonna stop here. The video is too long, I think maybe over 20 minutes, probably over 20 minutes. And in the next video, we're gonna make our platforms move. We are gonna move the camera and do some other stuff. So I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.